The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace gardens as William stood by the tall windows of his private study. His hands trembled slightly as he held the letter that had arrived just an hour before. The royal seal seemed heavier than usual, carrying news that would change everything he thought he knew about duty, love, and sacrifice. Kate entered the room quietly, her footsteps barely audible on the Persian carpet. She had learned to read his moods over the years, and today something was different. The way his shoulders tensed, the manner in which he stared out at the grounds without really seeing them, all signs that pointed to trouble brewing beneath the surface of their carefully orchestrated public life. "The children are asking for you," she said softly, approaching him with the same careful grace she had mastered since becoming part of the royal family. "George wants to show you his drawing from art class, and Charlotte has been practicing that piano piece you taught her." William turned slowly, his blue eyes reflecting a sadness that seemed to come from somewhere deep within. The letter crinkled in his grip as he faced his wife, the woman who had stood beside him through every triumph and challenge of their public life. How could he tell her what the letter contained? How could he explain that everything they had built together was about to be tested in ways they never imagined? "Kate," he began, his voice carrying an unusual heaviness. "We need to talk." She moved closer, her brown eyes searching his face for clues about what had brought this sudden change in his demeanor. Over the years, they had faced media scrutiny, family pressures, and the constant weight of public expectation. But this felt different. This felt like something that could shake the very foundation of who they were as a couple. The letter detailed a situation that had been developing quietly behind palace walls for months. A decision had been made at the highest levels of the monarchy, one that would require William to undertake a mission that could separate them for an indefinite period. It was not a choice he could refuse, not a duty he could delegate to someone else. The weight of the crown sometimes demanded sacrifices that went far beyond public appearances and charitable obligations. Kate read the contents of the letter twice, her face growing pale as the implications became clear. The mission would take William to regions where communication would be limited, where his safety could not be guaranteed, and where the timeline for return remained uncertain. It was the kind of assignment that royals of previous generations had undertaken during times of crisis, but something she had never imagined would touch their modern lives. "When?" she asked simply, folding the letter with steady hands despite the storm brewing inside her heart. "3 weeks," William replied, moving to stand beside her. "The preparations are already underway. The security briefings begin next Monday." They stood together in silence, both understanding that this moment marked a turning point in their relationship. The fairy tale that the public saw, the perfect royal couple who seemed to have everything, was about to face a test that would reveal what lay beneath the carefully maintained surface of their public personas. Kate thought about the children, about how to explain their father's absence without causing them to worry. She thought about the months ahead, managing royal duties alone while carrying the private burden of not knowing when or if William would return safely. The weight of maintaining a brave face for the public while dealing with her personal fears seemed almost overwhelming. "The children cannot know the full details," William said, as if reading her thoughts. "The official story will be that I am undertaking extended diplomatic work." "Extended, but temporary." She nodded, understanding the delicate balance they would need to maintain. Their personal pain would need to remain hidden while they continued to serve their public roles. The smile she wore at charity events would need to be genuine enough to convince millions of observers, even while her heart carried the weight of uncertainty. That evening, they sat with George, Charlotte, and Louis for what would be one of their last family dinners before the announcement of William's departure. The children chatted excitedly about school projects and upcoming holidays, blissfully unaware that their world was about to change dramatically. Kate watched William interact with each child, memorizing these moments that would need to sustain them both during the difficult months ahead. Later, after the children had been tucked into bed, William and Kate walked through the palace gardens under a star-filled sky. The same paths where they had strolled during their courtship now seemed to echo with the weight of their approaching separation. They talked about practical matters, how to handle public engagements, how to maintain the children's routines, how to keep their connection strong across distance and uncertainty. But beneath the practical discussions lay deeper fears that neither wanted to voice. What if the mission proved more dangerous than anticipated? What if the separation changed them in ways they could not predict? What if the fairy tale that had captured the world's imagination was not strong enough to survive real-world challenges? As they prepared for bed that night, Kate found herself studying William's face in the dim light of their bedroom. She wanted to memorize every detail. The way he smiled when he was trying to be brave, the small scar above his eyebrow from a childhood accident, the gentle way he brushed her hair from her face when he thought she was sleeping. "We will get through this," he whispered into the darkness, holding her close. "Whatever happens, we will find our way back to each other." Kate did not reply immediately, but her arms tightened around him. She understood that some promises were made not because they were certain, but because the alternative was too frightening to consider. Tomorrow would bring the first of many difficult conversations with palace officials, security advisors, and family members who would help them navigate this unexpected challenge. The 3 weeks that followed passed in a blur of preparation and carefully managed public appearances. William underwent intensive briefings about his mission, while Kate began adjusting to the reality of managing their public duties alone. They attended their final joint engagement together, a charity gala that raised funds for military families, without the audience knowing it would be months before they would see the royal couple together again. On their last night together, they sat in their private sitting room, surrounded by photo albums that documented their life together from university sweethearts to global figures. Each image told a story of growth, challenge, and deepening love that had survived the unique pressures of royal life. Now they would discover whether that love could survive physical separation and the unknown dangers that lay ahead. The palace staff moved quietly through the halls, making final preparations for William's departure. His luggage was minimal, appropriate for someone embarking on what the public would understand as diplomatic work. The reality of his mission remained known only to a select few, a secret that Kate would carry alone during the months ahead. As dawn approached, they held each other without speaking, both understanding that words could not capture the magnitude of what they were facing. The silent farewell they shared in those final hours would need to sustain them through whatever challenges lay ahead. Their love, tested by public scrutiny and royal protocol, was about to face its most difficult trial yet. The black car pulled away from the palace as the sun rose over London, carrying William toward an uncertain future. Kate watched from their bedroom window until the vehicle disappeared beyond the palace gates, her reflection in the glass showing a composed face that masked the turmoil within her heart. The children were still sleeping, unaware that their father had left for what might be many months away from home. Within hours, the palace issued a carefully worded statement about William's extended diplomatic mission. The media coverage focused on his commitment to international relations and his role as a future king taking on greater responsibilities. Kate read the news reports with a mixture of pride and pain, knowing that the official narrative told only the smallest fraction of the real story. The first weeks of separation established a routine that became Kate's lifeline. Morning briefings with palace staff replaced the quiet conversations she used to share with William over coffee. Royal engagements that they once attended together now fell solely on her shoulders, requiring her to project twice the energy and warmth to fill the space left by his absence. George, Charlotte, and Louis adapted to their father's absence with the resilience of children, though Kate noticed small changes in their behavior. George became more serious during their evening talks, asking thoughtful questions about his father's work that suggested he sensed something important was happening. Charlotte threw herself into her piano practice with increased determination, as if perfect performances could somehow bring her father home sooner. The encrypted phone calls from William came irregularly, sometimes days apart, and always brief. His voice carried the strain of his mission, though he tried to keep their conversations focused on home and the children. Kate learned to read between the lines of his carefully chosen words, understanding that he could not speak freely about the challenges he was facing. "The work is progressing," he would say during their conversations, a phrase that told her nothing and everything at the same time. She responded with updates about the children's activities and her official duties, creating a bridge of normalcy across the distance that separated them. 3 months into the separation, Kate attended a state dinner alone for the first time. The elaborate affair required her to engage with foreign dignitaries and navigate complex protocols without William's steady presence beside her. She wore her grandmother's sapphire earrings, a small reminder of family strength that helped her maintain her composure throughout the evening. The media began to speculate about William's extended absence, though the official explanations held firm. Kate faced increasingly pointed questions about when her husband would return, forcing her to perfect responses that revealed nothing while maintaining public confidence in the royal family's stability. Each interview became an exercise in careful honesty, telling the truth without revealing anything that mattered. During a visit to a children's hospital, Kate met a young girl named Emma who was facing a long separation from her military father. As they talked about missing someone important, Kate found herself offering comfort that came from genuine understanding rather than royal training. The conversation reminded her that their situation, while unique in its specific circumstances, connected them to families around the world dealing with separation and uncertainty. The palace gardens became Kate's refuge during this period. She would walk the same paths she had shared with William, sometimes calling him from secluded spots where they had once planned their future together. These conversations, brief and carefully monitored, became precious connections across the vast distance between them. Christmas approached with particular poignancy. The royal family's holiday traditions would continue, but William's absence would be impossible to hide completely. Kate worked with the palace staff to maintain familiar routines for the children while privately grieving for the Christmas morning they should have shared together. She found herself creating new traditions that honored William's presence even in his absence. The children wrote letters to their father that Kate could not send through normal channels. Instead, she recorded videos of them reading their messages aloud, hoping that someday William would be able to watch these glimpses into the family life he was missing. George's letters were filled with school achievements and questions about when they might travel together again. Charlotte's messages included songs she had learned and drawings of family adventures they would have when he returned. 6 months into the separation, Kate received news that the mission had encountered unexpected complications. The details were classified beyond her security clearance, but the implications were clear. William's return would be delayed indefinitely. The weight of this information, which she could share with no one, pressed down on her during public appearances where she was expected to radiate confidence and joy. During this period, Kate discovered reserves of strength she never knew she possessed. Leading the family through royal obligations while managing her private fears required a kind of courage that went far beyond anything her royal training had prepared her for. She learned to compartmentalize her worry, to be fully present for her children and her duties while carrying the uncertainty about William's safety in a separate space within her heart. The media coverage of her solo appearances began to shift during this time. Instead of focusing on William's absence, reporters started highlighting Kate's grace under pressure and her increasing confidence in her royal role. The fairy tale narrative evolved into something more complex and perhaps more meaningful, a story about resilience, duty, and the different ways that love can be expressed even across impossible distances. Kate began to understand that their separation was not just a test of their relationship, but an opportunity to discover who they were as individuals within their partnership. The woman who had defined herself partly through her connection to William was learning to stand alone while maintaining the bonds that connected them across continents. Letters from William, when they came through secure channels, revealed his own journey of growth and challenge. His writing had gained a depth and thoughtfulness that spoke to experiences that were changing him in fundamental ways. Kate treasured these glimpses into his inner life, understanding that the man who eventually returned would be different from the one who had left, just as she was becoming different through managing his absence. One evening, while reading bedtime stories to Louis, Kate found herself improvising tales about brave knights who traveled to distant lands on important missions. The stories always ended with joyful reunions, creating hope in fictional form that helped sustain both her and the children through the continuing uncertainty about when their real-life story would reach its resolution. The approaching anniversary of William's departure brought both reflection and renewed determination. Kate had not only survived the separation but had grown into a stronger version of herself. The royal role that had once felt overwhelming now felt manageable, even natural. She had learned to find joy and purpose in her work while holding space for the love and worry that connected her to her absent husband. As autumn arrived, Kate received a coded message that suggested changes were coming in William's situation. The details remained classified, but something in the tone suggested movement toward resolution. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope that their long separation might be approaching its end, though she had learned to temper optimism with the realism that had carried her through the previous months. The children had grown during their father's absence, adapting to new routines while maintaining their connection to him through photos, videos, and the stories Kate shared about his important work. They had learned lessons about duty, sacrifice, and love that would shape their understanding of what it meant to be part of a family committed to serving others, even when that service required difficult personal sacrifices. The encrypted message arrived on a gray November morning, just as Kate was reviewing her schedule for the week ahead. The words were few and carefully chosen, but they carried the news she had been hoping for during 10 long months of separation. William's mission was nearing completion, and arrangements were being made for his return home. Kate read the message 3 times, her hands trembling slightly as the reality began to sink in. The reunion she had dreamed about during countless sleepless nights was finally becoming a possibility. Yet alongside the joy came unexpected anxiety about how they would reconnect after such a prolonged separation. They had both changed during their time apart, grown in ways that distance and individual challenges had shaped. The palace staff moved into action with the same discretion that had marked William's departure. Security protocols were reviewed, schedules were quietly adjusted, and preparations began for managing the public narrative around his return. The official story would maintain that his diplomatic mission had concluded successfully, requiring no explanation of the true nature of his work or the dangers he had faced. Kate found herself studying recent photographs of William that had been shared through secure channels. His face showed new lines around his eyes, evidence of experiences that had tested him in ways she could only imagine. The boyish prince she had married had evolved into someone marked by serious responsibilities and difficult decisions. She wondered if he would notice similar changes in her, the confidence that had grown from managing royal duties alone, the strength that had developed from carrying family responsibilities during his absence. The children sensed something different in their mother's energy, though she tried to maintain her usual routines. George, now more perceptive after months of his father's absence, asked direct questions about whether there was news about when William might return. Kate found herself giving carefully honest answers that acknowledged his curiosity while protecting the family's security requirements. 3 days before William's scheduled return, Kate received permission to share limited details with the children. The conversation took place in their private sitting room, the same space where she and William had spent their last evening together before his departure. George sat up straighter when he heard that his father would be coming home soon. Charlotte clapped her hands together and immediately began planning a welcome home celebration. Louis, who had grown significantly during his father's absence, listened with the serious expression he had developed when processing important information. "Will he be different?" George asked, displaying the thoughtfulness that had emerged during his father's absence. People change when they go away for a long time. Kate considered his question carefully, recognizing the wisdom behind his young observations. "He will still be your father who loves you very much," she said. "But, yes, experiences change people. He has learned new things and faced new challenges. We have all changed while he was away." The night before William's return, Kate walked through the palace gardens one final time as a woman who had carried the family's responsibilities alone. The paths that had once echoed with her loneliness now felt different, marked by the strength she had discovered during the months of separation. She had proven to herself that she could manage their royal duties, raise their children, and maintain her own sense of identity even under the most challenging circumstances. Sleep came fitfully that last night. Kate found herself alternating between excitement about the reunion and nervousness about how they would reconnect. Their relationship had been tested by something more profound than the usual challenges of royal life. They had maintained their love across distance and uncertainty, but now they would need to discover how to be together again after becoming different people during their separation. The morning of William's return dawned clear and cold. Kate dressed carefully, choosing a blue dress that William had always admired, while trying to manage her own expectations about their reunion. The children were more excited than she had seen them in months, their energy filling the palace with anticipation that had been absent for too long. The official schedule showed William arriving at a military facility outside London, where he would undergo debriefings before being released to return home. Kate understood that his first hours back in the country would involve obligations to his mission commanders, but she had arranged for the afternoon to be completely private, time for their family to reconnect without the demands of royal protocol. At 2 o'clock, Kate stood in the same study where William had read the letter that began their long separation. The children waited in the adjacent room, having been coached about giving their parents a few minutes alone before joining the reunion. Kate heard footsteps in the hallway and recognized the particular rhythm of William's walk even before he appeared in the doorway. He looked both exactly as she remembered and completely different. The William who stood before her carried himself with a new kind of gravity, his shoulders reflecting burdens that had not been there when he left. His eyes found hers immediately, and for a moment they simply looked at each other across the space that represented 10 months of separation, growth, and change. "Kate," he said quietly, her name carrying the weight of everything he could not say about his experiences during their time apart. She moved toward him slowly, giving them both time to process the reality of being in the same room again. When she reached him, William's arms encircled her with a gentleness that spoke to how precious this moment felt after months of uncertainty. They held each other without speaking, both understanding that words could not capture the complexity of what they were feeling. "You look different," William said eventually, pulling back to study her face. "Stronger." "So do you," Kate replied, tracing the new lines around his eyes with her fingertip. "Older somehow. Wiser." The children's voices in the next room provided a gentle reminder that their reunion extended beyond the two of them. George, Charlotte, and Louis had waited long enough to see their father. When they entered the room, the greetings were both joyful and slightly shy, as children often are when reconnecting with someone important who has been absent. William knelt to their level, embracing each child individually while asking specific questions about their activities during his absence. Kate watched this interaction with deep satisfaction, seeing how quickly he reconnected with each personality while acknowledging the ways they had grown during his time away. That evening, after the children had been put to bed, Kate and William sat together in their private sitting room. The conversation flowed slowly at first, both of them aware that they were relearning how to be together. William shared what details he could about his mission, while Kate described the challenges and discoveries of managing their royal duties alone. "I was not sure I could do it," Kate admitted during their conversation. "Managing everything without you, maintaining the public role while dealing with my private fears. But I learned that I was stronger than I realized." William nodded thoughtfully. "The mission taught me similar lessons about my own capabilities. There were moments when I had to make decisions that would have been impossible to imagine before I left. We have both grown during this separation." As the days that followed established new routines that incorporated William's presence, both of them recognized that their relationship had evolved into something deeper and more resilient. The fairy tale elements of their public story had been tested by real-world challenges that revealed the solid foundation beneath the romantic narrative. Their first public appearance together drew massive media attention and public celebration. The images of their reunion became symbols of hope for families dealing with separation due to military service, diplomatic work, or other demanding commitments. The royal couple who had captured public imagination through their courtship and wedding had now demonstrated the kind of lasting love that could survive serious challenges. In private moments, Kate and William continued to discover how their individual growth during the separation had actually strengthened their partnership. They had learned to appreciate each other not just as romantic partners, but as individuals capable of carrying significant responsibilities independently while maintaining their commitment to shared goals and values. The children adapted to their father's return with the same resilience they had shown during his absence. Family dinners resumed their former warmth, though conversations now included stories and perspectives that reflected everyone's growth during their time apart. George had developed new interests, Charlotte had mastered several piano pieces, and Louis had reached developmental milestones that William worked to catch up on through photos and videos. Months later, when reporters asked Kate about the period of William's extended diplomatic work, she would describe it as a time that tested and ultimately strengthened their family. She spoke about learning to appreciate the different ways that love could be expressed, sometimes through presence and daily support, sometimes through carrying responsibilities alone while maintaining faith in eventual reunion. The silent farewell that had marked the beginning of their separation had been transformed into a deeper understanding of what their partnership could withstand. Their love story, which had begun in the public eye as a modern fairy tale, had evolved into something more complex and ultimately more meaningful, a testament to the power of commitment, growth, and the kind of love that becomes stronger through surviving its most difficult tests. Their experience had taught them that true partnerships sometimes required individual journeys that made reunion more precious because it was not guaranteed, but chosen again and again through all the challenges that life could present. The silent farewell had become a silent promise that love strong enough to survive separation was love strong enough to last a lifetime.